Welcome, one and all, to the Side Hustle podcast, the podcast for sports that hustle harder. It's basically what we try and do is give the limelight to the sports that don't really necessarily get it all the time, therefore have to work a little bit harder to get any kind of recognition. Well, we want to give that recognition. So, with that being said, we're talking about a sport that I don't really know anything about, I'll be completely honest, but that's okay, because I've got an expert in flag football. Jon Wyse is joining me. Jon, how the devil are we?
Very good, Jack, except for the fact that pre-recording, I decided to have a quick shave and I nicked myself. So I've got this massive plaster on. I've got this little tiny nick that is just not wanting to stop bleeding. So rather than bleed all over the camera, I thought I'd just whack a plaster on and kind of look how I look and crack on with it. But that's what we do in sport, isn't it? We sometimes just whack a bandage on, get on and, carry on.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to do right now. Jon, a little bit of a brief about yourself. You've been involved in over 5 decades. You've scored in 5 decades of British American football. You play multiple disciplines of the sport. You're a lecturer at Loughborough University. Tell us about your involvement in British American football and then maybe sort of go into the flag football part of it.
Yeah, so I'll just quickly correct you. So I work at Loughborough College. And I guess a tenuous link to the previous episode is I work closely with Ricardo Vasconcelos and the England Handball Talent Pathway. So I'm an elite sport manager working on talent programs, the Diploma in Sporting Excellence, and handball falls under the portfolio of sports that I look after. And one of the other sports that I look after, and I won't give a shout out to any of the others because I'm for fear of excluding any of the other 17 that we work with at Loughborough. But I also work with British American football and directly with flag football. So I'm working with some 16 to 18-year-olds following a level 3 qualification and following and aspiring to pick up their sporting dreams through both on and off field education support. But my involvement with the British American football game, as you said, I've been involved with it as a player, and I still currently play since the late 80s. So once the sport initially came to the shores via the NFL and Channel 4, decided to pick the ball up, metaphorically and physically speaking. And I've just continued to play since. And I've been involved with aspects of coach education, with coaching. I've actually been on the BAFA board, the national governing body, as vice chair and in a couple of other roles. And currently I'm on a few of the kind of BAFA committees. So our Hall of Fame selection committee, our coaching committee, our sports science and sports medicine committee. So really bringing some of the expertise I've had from my day job, my paid employment, into kind of like my voluntary life. And, one of the obviously biggest news items that we've had in the sport in the last 9 months is that flag football, which is a version of American football, which doesn't involve helmets and shoulder pads and a lot of direct collision, it does involve some contact, is actually an exhibition sport for the Los Angeles 2028 Olympic Games. So that's brought on a whole host of different opportunities and some challenges, but really, really exciting time for the sport to kind of evolve and develop even more, and hopefully, become a bit less of a side sport. But I guess we'll just have to see how that one goes.
There's nothing wrong with the side sport, though, and it sounds very exciting. We will get into that. But first of all, what we want to do in this podcast is try and take someone who doesn't really know anything about flag football and then potentially also satisfy the people that already know a lot, already play a lot, of potentially national champions and stuff like that, which, by the way, the women's national championships ended in a shootout. That was very exciting to watch, but I knew nothing that was going on. So Jon is going to explain that to us a little later. First of all, Jon, what is flag football? How is it different to normal American football that we might see on the telly? Because I think most people would say that American football is no longer niche, even in Britain, or anywhere like that. So what is flag football? Because it's a lot more accessible, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's probably, I think I saw some recent statistics from the International Federation of American Football, our global governing body, that said it is one of the fastest growing games in the world currently. And I know colleagues at the NFL, based in Europe, in the UK and in other parts of the world, are doing a massive job of pushing flag football as an alternative and accessible and inclusive, and as an entry version to contact American football. I guess the main difference that you'll see immediately is there is no additional helmet and shoulder pads, because there isn't that element to be as protective of players, and there aren't the collisions that you would see in the NFL game or the college football game. It's a smaller side game. So whereas most tackle American football is 11-a-side. They play 12-a-side in Canada. They have some funky rules there. Flag football is primarily a 5-a-side game. So again, it makes it far easier to bring a team together because you don't need as many players. You don't need the 50 players you would need on a kitted football team. You would only need maybe 12 on a flag team. You could probably even get away with less if you had some athletes who are willing to play, and play both ways. The field is smaller as well. A flag football field is 50 yards from the front of the end zone to the front of the other end zone. And then you've got two 10-yard end zones at either end. So it's 70 yards in length. And it's only 25 yards wide, whereas a full-size American football is 53 1/3 yards wide. We actually had a setup, and this happens quite a lot within the UK, where you could quite comfortably fit 2 flag football fields on a soccer field. I'm gonna apologise to any of my friends who talk about soccer as being real football, because it is, but on a real football field, and still have some space at the end to have a bit of runoff space. But you could comfortably fit 2, and sometimes depending on the width, you could probably even fit 3 flag football fields on a traditional football field that we have in the UK. So that's probably the main difference. So visually, it looks very, very different. And there aren't as many officials as well. So again, it makes it a lot more easier to bring people together to have a competition and a game day.
Yeah, for people out there that are metric only, 70 yards is roughly 64 meters or something like that, isn't it? So it's not exactly a small pitch, is it? But it is definitely accessible for the people out there. How long has it been sort of going on? But also, I suppose first, actually, before we get into the history of it slightly, you mentioned that there's 5-a-side. You mentioned it's a 70-yard pitch. What counts as a tackle? How many points do you get for actually scoring? Let's just cover those off before we get into anything else, because they're fairly quick answers. Most people listening to this.
Yeah, so the scoring system is very similar. So you would get 6 points for a touchdown. And obviously you don't have to touch the ball down. You cross the plane of the goal line and you have to be in possession of the ball, or the ball has to cross the plane. You don't have to. So you get 6 points, and instead of kicking an extra point, because there's no kicking in flag football, you would actually go for another attempt to score a touchdown from 5 yards out for 1 point. Or you could play a bit of a Jeopardy game and go for 2 points, but go from 10 yards away. So it's harder to score from that distance. You're working on a slightly bigger field, slightly deeper field, but you've got more yards to gain. And then the other scoring system is if you get tackled with the ball in your own end zone, that counts as a safety, which is 2 points, which again is very similar to the NFL 11-a-side game. And basically all players will wear a belt with 2 flags attached to the waist. And basically to tackle the person in possession of the ball, you have to remove their flag. And it comes out with a lovely, a lovely sounding kind of pop to it. Ooh. So the modern flag is a kind of like a rubber popper. So it makes a sound that if you listen close enough, you can actually hear, and it allows the ball carrier to hear that they're tackled. And then obviously there's other signals that players give to indicate that the tackle's been made. But yeah, that's basically how you would stop the ball carrier progressing, down the field.
Fair enough, yeah, because I play a lot of tag rugby, but that's all done with Velcro, so it's sort of stuff like half the Velcro. You sometimes stop, but actually it's still attached to, which is very annoying. But if there's a definite pop, that would definitely help. Right, okay, let's crack into a bit of the juicy bits. Now we've done some of the basics. What makes flag football special or unique, or compared to maybe some of the other sports that are happening in the UK? Maybe some of the other sports that we actually will cover on Side Hustle Sports. What makes flag football fast growing? What's appealing about it?
I think the thing that I think makes the sport of American football so appealing is that you can have one thing that you do really well that can make your entire day. So you can have one play where you make a great run, a great catch, a great bat down, an interception, a tackle, a great throw, and you can come away going, wow, I've really achieved something. I guess anyone who's an amateur golfer can probably kind of find the same appeal.
Thinking that.
Yeah, that one shot has made your entire day.
Buy a membership for one shot, basically, isn't it? You go in, you spend £1,000 on a membership because you hit one good green on the 18th or something.
Absolutely. And I think it's that feeling that you can have, along with the ability, I guess, to personalize success and individualize what success means for you. So success isn't necessarily the outcome of the game. It might be that you've caught a pass that was thrown to you. It might be that you've run a pass route and you're open. It might be that you've had a knockdown, or you've tackled somebody, or you've worked on an aspect of your game. So I think because it's an intermittent game where you get that mass substitution, you can come away feeling that you've achieved something because of one thing that you've done. And I think, again, sorry, go on, Jack.
I was just about to bring up the mass substitution. Does that feel like it slows it down for individuals, or do you find that you don't have that sort of like, oh, I have to come off now, like you might do in...
No, I think compared to the 11-a-side NFL version of the game, so I might even default to calling that NFL, even though that really bugs me. So that gets slowed down because there's quite a long way for the players to get onto the field as well. They've got to go 26 and 2/3 yards to get halfway across the field. Flag is only 25 yards wide, so the substitution is really, really quick. And again, there are rules to kind of speed the game clock up. So the action happens really quick. And again, I think players understand that at some point I'm going to come off and someone else is going to go on for this particular play, and then I'm going to be back on again. And it's not like I'm off and that's it for the rest of the day. I'm off for one play and maybe I'm going to be back on for the next play. So I need to stand by and be ready. So I don't think that slows it down. I think that probably increases the appeal of it, because you can play lots of different positions and do lots of different things. And again, the game has evolved certainly in the last 3 or 4 years, where, the flexibility of a player and the generalization of skill set is actually more important than ever before. American football has a history of being very position specific and very specialist, which probably goes against everything we know in the UK. And that's probably why it's not really taken off, because you have you may come on and just kick the ball, or you may just pass it, back to the quarterback, and then you're physically blocking and you never touch the ball other than that. Flag football allows you to do a variety of different things. You can be the additional quarterback. So lots of teams operate a 2 quarterback system. So, you still have a chance to throw the ball, even if you're not the best passer of the ball.
Yes.
And so, that really is interesting.
I saw this, and it really did. I was watching it thinking, I don't know why NFL don't do it more or something, where you can actually sort of, there's a lot more ball handling and passing between each other than there is on any other sort of American football that I've seen, because to me, that's obvious as a handball. I think, well, why don't you just pass it to each other and pass it around these people rather than just lumping it or running into them constantly? Now, I'm very naive, don't get me wrong, but it does make it more interesting to watch, I think, the clips that I've seen and how you can pass around each other.
And I think because possession swaps from team to team in the natural flow of a normal game very, very quickly. So it's not like the NFL version where a team may get the ball near their own goal line and may drive up the field. And it can take, sometimes up to 20 minutes in real time with them in possession. For the less experienced, that could be, if it's not your team, that could be really, really dull and boring. And let's be honest, it can be at times, because they're just grinding the clock down. They're grinding out the yards, and it's very good football in certain aspects, but it's not exciting to watch. Whereas in flag, and because you've still got the same 4 downs rule that's in place, so you get 4 plays to make a certain amount of yardage. The turnovers happen quite quickly. And again, it's not quite as high scoring as basketball, but high scores are probably more commonplace than they are an exception. So the women's final was a 21-20, which we'll come back to later on again. And I've just given the result away there, haven't I? Though I've not said who's won.
Don't worry.
But that was relatively low scoring until the last couple of minutes of the game. But that again is an appeal of it, is there's lots of chances to score and lots of chances to have possession within the 2 20-minute halves if you're playing to standard, international rules.
Yeah, screw it. We'll go on to it. Like, why not? Let's delve into it, because honestly, it was. I watched like some Instagram clips of it, and it was very exciting for me to watch. And as I said, I knew nothing that was going on. So to put it in perspective, I can't remember who the 2 teams were now. Embarrassingly,
so the Coventry Cougars, who are the defending champions and had won the previous not won the previous 9 finals, but 9 times they've won the Women's Flag League. So they were aiming for their 10th championship. Wow. And they were playing their local rivals, the Coventry Panthers.
That's why it meant so much.
And both teams had, they'd won 15 of their 16, I think it's 16 games they played, but they'd won all but one game each, where they'd split their own home and away, essentially home and away fixture. So the Panthers beat the Cougars in their first meeting. The Cougars beat the Panthers in their second meeting, claimed a head-to-head advantage in terms of seedings for the finals. But they both worked their way, because they were separate sides of the bracket. They both worked their way into the final. So there was a lot of anticipation because they'd beaten each other in the regular season. And obviously the Cougars were going for their 10th. The Panthers were going for their first. And the players know each other really, really well. So really, really intense. And having spoken to some of the players this past weekend, really, lots at stake, more than just local pride.
That's what we love about Side Hustle Sports, though, isn't it? The fact that, people will never even known that this thing is going on. And yet, if you're involved with it, if it's sort of part of your life, the story is just as intense as any normal football or Six Nations or anything like that, isn't it?
Well, I'm going to give her a shout out. I spoke to the finals day MVP, Emma Dedico, yesterday and over the weekend, because I'm not sure when this is coming out, at a GB flag camp. We had GB men, GB women and GB youth all in Loughborough, for the weekend. And I asked her about how was it Monday morning? And she was like, well, it was kind of a bit of an anticlimax because I have a few friends who were messaging me throughout the day and over the weekend, sort of saying whatever they were saying and congratulating me for our success. And I haven't told you who she plays for. So again, try not to spoil the outcome. Unless that appears early in the commentary. Clearly can't keep a secret. But she said, I went into work and no one really knew. And it's kind of like, she's become a British champion and no one at work understands that. And again, it's just where the sport is. And again, she and a couple of other teammates said, well, within a couple of days, we were like, right, next thing, GB, next thing, next season and how we defend our title. So, yeah.
Let's get on to how they won it then, or whoever the team was that did win it. Yeah. What on earth is a shootout? How do they get there? And, how long is a game? How long is a shootout? And what is the shootout?
So the game is two halves of 20 minutes and the clock. So again, unlike NFL football, the clock runs and continues to tick until the final 2 minutes of each half. So you can basically say the game is going to be wrapped up in in about an hour, unless something massively significant happens. And what happens, which again makes it far more marketable and accessible than a tackle football game, an NFL type game that could be anywhere between 2.25 hours to 3.5 hours, which, is quite demanding on players, officials, spectators and everyone around. I guess I can't remember exactly what the score was as it entered the last few minutes of the second half, so the final half. But basically, one team was up, the other team drove down, scored, got the extra point to take a 1-point lead. The other team then drove down, scored, didn't take the lead, to then we know it ended in a tie at the end of regulation, so no spoiler there. So the game was tied, and then the other team who
you can say the names, otherwise it's going to get
okay. Yeah, so the Panthers then, so the Cougars tied it up at 20-all, and then the Panthers then had a drive to go down the field to score. And again, the way the game works, just briefly backtracking, is you start at your own 5-yard line. You have 4 goes to gain 20 yards to get across the halfway. As soon as you get across halfway, regardless of whether that's on your first go or your fourth go, you then have 4 more goes to score. So the Panthers drove down, got a first down over the half, drove down, got within, I think they ended up being within about 6 yards of the Cougars goal line. There were 13 seconds left. There were 2 downs left. They threw a quick pass, and I can't remember whether it was incomplete or only gained a few yards. They had 6.5 seconds left. I remember the officials sort of declaring this. On this was on their third down, actually. They then threw a ball. It was incomplete. They then had one more play with 2 seconds left in order to score. And any score wouldn't have required them to go for the extra point. They would have been 26-20 ahead. So they went for that, didn't score. The game then went to overtime. The overtime rules are very similar to what you would see in NCAA college football. So it's not like the NFL where you basically start another game and there are ways that you have equal possession. So each team was then entitled to have one drive, so 4 goes to go from the halfway line to score. Neither team scored. So then it goes to another period of overtime. And rather than just repeating the same thing over again and getting nowhere and it becoming really boring, the rules are that you then go into an extra point shootout. So you it's basically
like a penalty shootout, isn't it?
You basically you each have a go from 5 yards out. And if you score and the other team doesn't, you win. Or if they don't score and you do, then whatever. So I think the Cougars were first on offense. They went for it, didn't score. Great breakup by a couple of the defensive players on the Panthers. And then the Panthers went for their play. Quarterback, drop back. Alice Briggs, I give her a shout out. Drop back, looked to throw to her left. That was covered. And suddenly a player appeared wide open in the middle. She dropped off a short pass to her. And she just basically, I think she was either in the end zone or she had to take a step and she scored. Just one of those things that was just a great play by the offense. A bit of a miscommunication by the defense. I think, again, I don't know their playbook, so I can't, assign any blame anywhere, and I wouldn't want to. But just a great finish to a really great day where the top 8 teams had all gone up to Motherwell and had some really, interesting games between the different teams as the day progressed. Yeah, and again, I'd seen 8 different game days in the north and the south throughout the season. So I'd seen all the teams play several times. And it was just a great finish to what had been a really high quality season, with some interesting results and some, standout performances by several of the players.
So it was brilliant to watch. And I do encourage anybody to go on the Baffer Flag Instagram page, even if you just want a bit of a sample of how that finished, because it was epic, and even as I said, it got me excited. I didn't even know what was going on. So
I'll share you the link, the YouTube link to the final, that people can watch the whole game on YouTube should they want to.
Absolutely. Yeah, that'd be brilliant. That's the women's game. The men's game and the junior games. I believe you sent me a message and said they run at different times during the year or something like that. So give us a bit of a breakdown now. What are we looking at over this summer? What are we going to be looking at?
Yeah, so most community-based football, both adult tackle and youth tackle and flag, tends to occur during the summer. So historically, it was always avoid the winter sports, play it in the summer, and obviously we know that every other mainstream sport expands their calendar to take over those summer months. So it becomes even more challenging for us as a smaller sport to get the foothold that we want. So, so both and then it's not a men's league as such. They are mixed adult leagues. So again, that's part of again, some of the appeal of the sport is that you can play men and women together. So we have, in contact football, in fact, let's start with flag because that's what we're really talking about. I'm only going to talk about flag actually. So we have a mixed adult flag league. Division 1 started 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
The Premier Division starts, I think, next week. And they play their games through the season that culminates in a final. I think, and I'm just looking at days of international competitions, that culminates in and around kind of September. And I think BAFA is yet to confirm that because there's some European championships that both youth and adults are involved in as well. The men's, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, how populated is those sort of games then? Because you said about the 2 rivals in the women's game, the Panthers and the Cougars. How many teams are we talking about that actually sort of participate in those levels, sort of thing?
So I should have done my research and found this out. So in the mixed adult flag league, there are probably over about 40 teams. And
really?
what happens in quite a few cases that teams will have a second and a third team. So they might designate that by the colors. So for example, let's think of an example. A team might have so East Kilbride, I know this is their women's team. They had an East Kilbride's black and an East Kilbride's red. The Manchester Titans have got the Manchester Titans. They've got the Manchester Titans Bees, and I can't remember what their third team is called. So again, that allows players at the elite level an opportunity to play in the Premiership with the main team. It allows players who want to be a little bit more recreational an opportunity to play with the second or third team, depending. And then it also allows some of our elite GB women to play in that league as well. So they get that additional stress test playing against men, and holding their own in a lot of cases as well.
I'm excited to see it. I'm definitely going to follow along. I've already started on Instagram following a load of these different clubs and different sports.
So BAFA has, the reigning, shout out to the Glasgow Bees, who are the reigning men's champion. They defeated the London Smoke, who were, I think, 2-3-time champion before them. But the BAFA kind of generates towards the finals day in the early autumn, late summer. And also our youth season happens alongside that as well. So we have under 17s and under 15s who play during the season, and that culminates. Historically, it's been a tournament weekend up in Manchester. And everyone descends upon Manchester for that weekend, supports everyone, cheers everyone on, competes against everyone. And then we end up with our British champion. So our women's league is slightly out of alignment with that. And again, I think BAFA are doing some work to kind of see how the puzzle fits together so we can support our elite athletes in their quest for Olympic qualification as well.
Yeah, which we're going to go on to. I like to keep these episodes around the half-hour mark, which this is going to be blown out of the water, to be honest. But that's why we're sort of skipping through things. We could do at least 4 or 5 episodes on all of this. So apologies if we think we're just skipping through a load of these topics and not really giving people credit they deserve. I'd love to come back and do another episode on flag football, and that's sort of the point of Side Hustle Sports. So we're going to very briefly talk about LA and GB aspirations, because as you've said, you've sort of been heavily involved in all that sort of thing over the years, John. Now, a lot of people obviously are looking at any sport and they want to potentially go into it. And then when they get hooked, they go into it recreationally, then they get hooked, and then they become obsessive. And then all of a sudden they find themselves playing for counties or in top divisions. And all of a sudden there's international prospects in there. What is, one, the pathway up to, and then what is the end goal? What do GB go then compete in? And obviously LA, but apart from LA, let's say.
Yeah, so very similar to other sports, the Olympic qualification cycle and process starts 3 years out. So we are in an Olympic qualification cycle right now. And the process for GB to accrue points towards that and to increase their position in the IFAF, the International Federation standings, is through the Continental Games. So in Paris, from the 25th to the 27th of September is the European Championships. They will earn points from that. And should GB place highly enough, and GB women, they're the current European champions, so there's high expectations for them to defend their title. GB men finished, I think, 10th in the Euros 2 years ago, and are aiming and have beaten the current European champions at the World Championships last year. So they're in the mix, really heavily. Then if they I think achieve top 6 position, they then qualify for the World Championships in 2026, which accrues even more points depending upon the placement that you have. And then we get into another cycle where there are European Championships in 2028. And I think IFAF hasn't yet decided whether the World Championships in 28 is a World Championships or whether the top 5 plus the USA as hosts go to the Olympics. That's essentially the World Championships, so that they can blow their budget and you have all their resources in that one singular tournament rather than trying to dilute the product a little bit. So right now, both GB men and GB women have been in camp. They were in camp with us at Loughborough. The college and the university, we kind of collaborate and co-hosted them over the weekend. They are looking to qualify, and they're looking to win the championships this year in September, accrue those points, and then do really well in the Worlds in 2026. So they're at the point where they're finalising their squads for this year. GB women have a little bit more of a shorter window because they also qualified for the World Games, the big multi-sport event that's being held in Chengdu in China from the 7th to the 17th of August. So they've got a massive year. because again, they're playing against the top 7 countries in the world, well, the top 6 in the world plus China as the hosts, in a tournament, in August, and then they go into the cauldron of European competition. So both squads are looking to kind of finalize their traveling squads, for those competitions. And the talent level is unreal. I was on the field, literally doing some ball spotting and umpiring and various other administration roles around the camps, and just seeing the athletes flying around and just their athleticism, their skill, their understanding of the sport is just, you know, having been around some of the elite level performers in other Olympic sports, you know, shout out to GB basketball way back in 2012. I've been around handball, as you know, from our pre-interview conversation. British judo I've worked really closely with, and GB boxing. These are some top-notch athletes who, you know, with probably a little bit more notoriety, publicity, support, financial support, you know, could stand there against any other Olympic athlete and go, you know, they are athletically as good and as talented and as hardworking as they are. So it's just awesome seeing some of the skills on display.
And so who are the sort of the standouts for these sort of GB teams then, that as they go into the international competition? I'm sure you're going to want to say everyone.
Jack,
I'm trying to make some celebrity out of them.
No, I think if I name drop people, those that I don't name drop would kill me. I think in the camps we've had, and because I've been in and around the sport for the last 2 years quite heavily, I've got and made it my business to understand and know and you know, and to support the athletes as best as I can and help them and help the BAFA bring some of the services and experiences to really strengthen the pathway. So if I gave a shout out to a player, and I know I've done that to 3 Coventry Panthers, 2 of whom or one of whom's on the GB squad and has been in and around that, the others would kill me. But yeah, some absolutely awesome athletes. And I, you know, I would encourage people to go away and, you know, do a bit of a social media search, find someone that really resonates with you, and then follow their story. There's some really interesting stories of people as to what they've done, you know, in the sport, and what they do outside of the sport as well.
Yeah, that's, as I said, what we're hoping to do when we revisit flag football, because it does sound like such a
maybe I'll say that once the squads have been named.
Yeah, that's a good idea, because you don't want to name drop someone and then they don't get in the squad. That'd be awkward.
Yeah, and again, I may or may not have a little bit of an inside information to some of the selections, so I don't want to, you know,
you don't want to be giving away hints.
No,
well, that would be a reward if anybody's got 32 minutes into the podcast and they find out they're in the squad. That'd be a hell of a reward, wouldn't it?
I don't think the coaches will be very happy with me, though.
I don't think so either. Okay, so if someone wants to play at the recreational level then, and someone wants to get involved with this brilliant sport, potentially they want to go and play in LA, and they think this is maybe a bit of a better step than trying to be a triple jumper or something like that. Yeah, what's the recreational view of the game? How do people get involved? And maybe they are just an NFL lover and they want to even get involved, but they're not as athletic, so they want to umpire and stuff like that. What is the ability to get into this sport, and where should people start looking?
Yeah, I think most of it is through our community clubs. So it's probably going on to websites like the BritishAmericanFootball.org. It's going on to the BAFA and the BAFA official and BAFA flag, so BAFA, Instagram sites. I'm not a big Instagram fan myself, just because I'm older, and, you know, that type of social media is just something I don't do as often as I should do. And just to kind of pick up where clubs in your locality, you know, I think that's the pathway. We have an active referees association who referee flag at the highest level, and some of our referees actually do IFAF tournaments and IFAF finals. So I'll give a shout out to Jed Brooks Lewis, who actually was one of the officials at the Women's World Championships final in Helsinki last year. He was able to get on the field, and his aspiration is to go to LA as well, irrespective of GB stuff. So we've got some really good people in the sport who are really high level. But yeah, most of the kind of insights into the game will come through working with a club. So, you know, go and do a Google search of your local flag teams. I'm sure at some point people can, you know, be directed back to, I'm happy to share my details with people as well, and I can direct you towards various people. But yeah, just keep an eye out on Instagram. And like I said, GB probably for this year, the window is closing in terms of ability to come in and be selected. I think there is some talent ID stuff in the works, because obviously, and don't tell Ricardo and other people, we would be looking at athletes who have probably traditionally played other sports, without trying to steal them at all. But yeah, just there are opportunities over the next couple of years to really get into the sport and give it a go and see how far you can take it.
There's lots of coaches in different sports that have all of a sudden just gone very tense.
Oh, well, my biggest personal challenge is I know a few pathway leads and performance directors in other sports who offer a really similar skill set. So at some point soon, I'm going to butter up to them and kind of go, maybe, have a look at some of the athletes we've got, because, they might be able to transfer too. And I know because his image was in the background of the first podcast with Ricardo, Dan McMillan, who was on the GB squad in 20. So I actually coached Dan McMillan as an American footballer in the early 2000s. Before he did the talent transfer and became a handball player and was on the GB squad and was on the GB coin, the 50 pence piece. So,
I didn't know that. I didn't know he was an American footballer before.
Yeah, he's an athlete, and I think he still is. He still runs around and does a few things. But no, again, that's the beauty of sport, is that you can take those attributes and qualities and mindset that you've got, and you can transfer it to other sports. Which again, I think is where flag has a massive opportunity to attract some really athletic people from people who've probably played other sports before.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, thank you very much, Jon, for cracking it. I feel like I had about 50 different questions. I feel like I've only asked about 7 because we went off on a few, not tangents, but sort of it's so interesting. Each sort of answer you've given has given us something else to think about. And I feel like we need to do another episode at some point to really delve into a few of these. But hopefully it's satisfied the people that are maybe new to the sport or have never even heard of it, and also the people that maybe were involved or wanted a bit of a brief and a bit of an analysis on the national champs and stuff like that. But it's been absolute honour. Is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to, or any links that you want to be sending, because we can include them in all the descriptions and stuff like that? If anybody wants to get involved in the sport, or any news stories that are coming up, any last little bits from you that you want to just get out there?
I think the message would be like with all the other sports, and I would advocate that, whether it's handball, whether it's korfball, whether it's flag football, find your local club, get in touch with them, give it a go. You never know. You may appear on an Olympic stage. A previous podcast, GB are getting closer and closer to Olympic qualification in handball. That's an amazing journey that the sport is on there, and that you could be part of that as well. Give it a go. Every Olympic cycle, new sports are coming into the Olympic family. So who knows? You could be at an Olympics, in the near future. And really. And again, if you're not someone who wants to play, just being around to support them. They are just awesome, very welcoming environments to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what niche sports are really built upon, is the community that the people play them, isn't it? So yeah, thank you very much, Jon. Right, that is all we're going to have time for the episode 2 of the Side Hustle Sports podcast. Big thank you to Jon for joining us. A big good luck to everybody who is also going to be playing flag football over the next couple of weeks. Congratulations to the Women's League and the Panthers and the Cougars, who put on such a spectacular show. We're very, very excited to be following along over the summer as well. Next week, hopefully, it's going to be korfball. We've actually switched. It was supposed to be korfball episode 2, flag football episode 3. We switched them around because korfball got busy. But fingers crossed, we're going to be able to bring you all the news with them and their upcoming finals weekends, because unlike flag football, they play in these sort of winter months, shall we say. So that is all from us, the Side Hustle Sports podcast. Please subscribe, follow along, do all the normal things that people always ask you to do at the end of these sort of videos, and we'll see you in the next one.